ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so checking the soft tissue of the hamstring. Soft tissue of the hamstring becomes much more obvious as far as why you would check it. A lot of people are going to complain about some form of sciatic aggravation, so pain from basically gluteal region all the way down the back of the leg and then everything below the knee. So when somebody says, I have sciatica, and they say it hurts here, please don't believe them. Say, you know what, you have pain in your thigh. I don't think you have sciatica. That's fine. So the distribution of the sciatic nerve and the types of things that people will feel. Low back pain, people presenting with low back pain will often have something going on mechanically with the hip and often mechanically with the back of the thigh, so hamstring-ish. So you check these things. Straight leg raises are traditionally used as a test, an orthopedic test, to figure out, depending on where in the range the pain is, whether or not it's the sciatic or if it's a disc. There's like a minor differentiation between where you are in the range. So earlier it's the sciatic, I think higher it's the disc, if I remember right. So we are able to observe across time that the hamstring seems to tie into back pain as a paired observation. Whether or not one is the cause of the other, tough to say. You just see it a lot. So when you know that you have something going on with the posterior side of the leg, or the lower limb rather, then you're going to probably need to check into the hamstring and do some work on it. So we'll have you on your back. So seated, checking the hamstring, not smart. Just don't do it, right? Supine, you get a bunch of options. You actually have way more options in supine for how you do this than in prone. Prone, you get some stuff better because it's exposed and you can see it. So you get some options there, but the leg is just generally straight. So straight leg, right? The hamstring is obviously in a relatively elongated position. If I wanted to check the hamstring on its own, I can come under the thigh, right? I'm going to stabilize on the femur. I'm going to hold the femur still, and I can pull and I can push. There is auxiliary movement without question, but I can push and I can pull. Now, based on my position, do you think that mechanically it's more likely that I'm going to find one thing restricted than the other? Right? What do you think which side? This side? So the lateral or the medial? What do you think I'm going to find more restricted based on my position most of the time? The medial. It's a little bit harder for me to pull. Also, the thigh being still on the table, even though my hand's there, there's just some contact that makes it tougher and stranger. Now, if I shorten the hamstring, generally speaking, and I expose it, now, this is where, if I were to use this hand, this is awkward. You see it's awkward for me, right? Because I have to come into heavy internal rotation. So I'm going to feel my shoulder, I'm going to feel my pec. So in this case, you end up a little bit crossed positionally, but you're less twisted here. So the push and the pull. Now, this becomes more clear because it's not necessarily stuck to the table. But sometimes because of other things, putting them in this position is uncomfortable sometimes, right? So the general idea of shortening the hamstring, relatively speaking, so shortening the lower portion of the hamstring, but putting some stretch in the higher portion of the hamstring, right? Stay away from the higher portion of the hamstring, especially in supine. In prone, it's not as bad because you're not going to get into as sensitive a set of areas. So I can take this off now, okay? So now I can't be here and do this. Can't really be here and do this. It gets weird. If I change my posture, now I'm going to bring the knee up so that I'm nice and tight. Now if I'm here, okay, lots of contact. The table does most of what I need. Now, right, in this case, you'd agree that this is a bad position for me to do it in. I need to come off of this a little bit. Now it works better. Agreed? Now again, am I a little bit more likely to find stuff on the medial side here? A little bit more likely just based on position, right? So now doing this doesn't make it any better, right? Because I lose control. But I can check here. Now yield to pressure, squishing into the hamstring, I can do here. But it's very pointed because it's got to be my thumb points. Some people would say you can do this, right? You can, but it's a blunt sense, right? So just everything feels tight, right? But you would agree that in your hamstring, not everything is tight. So some of this is the bias of the test, the built-in error of the position. Okay, you can get some information here, but you have to know that there are built-in errors. Okay, we'll have you on your stomach. So the place that it gets way easier to check the hamstring is in prone, right? So I can have yield to pressure, just a very, very general sense, right? So there-ish. Yeah. Okay, right? Broad contact. I'm choosing between what I'm feeling at the same time. There's actually something here too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So just as you walk up, it's like, oh. So as I said in supine, it's like it feels like everything's tight, but not everything's tight, right? Okay. We found 2 spots. That is one test. I can do it here, right? It's the same finding, right? I actually got to come over here. Yeah. That. Yeah, those 2, right? So funny enough, easier to find with fists, right? But you have to try all these things to figure it out. Now, I can also do a push-pull. Now, if I do a push-pull here, things are tighter, okay? If I do a push-pull like this, if I bend them here, I can wrap a little bit better. And you can see I immediately get more play out of that hamstring, right? So if we compare how far it moves here, I got to be in contact with the tissue. I don't want to see that, the rolling. You wrap around the tissue, you get the best grab you can, you push straight across, you pull towards you, right? Now, if we just look at that amount of motion, maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. I just can't move it as far, right? So the built-in errors in the test. This is a better test, push-pull. If I want to separate them out, right, this becomes hard, right? Like to actually do this. I may be able to do this, but it's just pokey, right? So there's something there. Yeah, right? That I didn't find with the other tests. So you see how, like, there's a lot of different ways to get to this. And you'll find stuff, but you won't always find the same stuff, right? Now, harder here. If I wanted to really check the medial side of the hamstring, it's actually better if I go cross table. Because now the test is going to have a bias towards the medial side, the push side, right? The pull is harder, right? So positioning makes a lot of difference in what you're going to be able to find. In prone, you can get decent yield to pressure. In supine, you can't. In supine, you have the challenge of the position, making it harder. The one that's probably going to give you the best information in supine is hip flexed, foot on table, right? There's less coordination required from you. There's less moving parts on your behalf, and you can be pretty clear about it, but it's just a general broad test of the hamstring push-pull, whereas in prone, you can get more yield to pressure. You can get much more specific without having a giant or a large amount of time spent poking people in the hamstring, right? You just get nice and broad, and you'll find stuff really quickly, right? So I could do this too. This finds slightly different things, right? There you go. There, now I find it even more accurately. So this is one way, this is another way. How you use your hands and what they're spanning will give you different types of information because you're just touching different stuff. But yield to pressure tells you where it is, and then you can kind of get in after it. But when you shorten the hamstring by bending the knee, the information gets different. Sort of. That still sucks. And that guy still sucks, right? Yeah. Okay, fair enough. All right, all good.